Welcome to Siliconsciousness, the DSR Network podcast focusing on the artificial intelligence revolution, politics, and policy.
This podcast is underwritten in part by the U.S. Embassy of the United Arab Emirates. Its editorial content is completely independent, and the views expressed are exclusively those of participating experts. It is presented live, without editing. For further information about the UAE's efforts in the areas of artificial intelligence and technology, go to the website of the embassy at www.uae-embassy.org and search for UAE-US Tech Cooperation. We thank them for their support. We thank everybody who's supporting this podcast for their support, and we look forward to it developing and growing over time because the issue is so important. Hello and welcome to Siliconsciousness. I'm your host, David Rothkopf, and this week, as every week, we're going to take a look at an aspect or two of AI. We're really fortunate this week to have with us Gigi Levy-Weiss. He is an Israeli businessman and investor, very successful investor, who is co-founder and partner of the investment firm and business accelerator NFX, coming to us today from Israel. How are you doing today, Gigi?
Thanks, David, and thanks for having me on the podcast.
Well, I followed your work, and clearly you work across a broad range of areas. You've done a lot in gaming. You've done things in defense technology. You've done things in generative AI. NFX has a great concept focusing on network effects and bringing those to bear for the companies you invest in, which I think is responsible in part for the success that you folks have had. But here we're interested in AI, and I've got a couple of questions about that. But to begin with, what we find is that AI is kind of a generalization to the point that it's a misleading term. It's a little bit like saying Asia. There's a lot in Asia. China's in Asia, Malaysia's in Asia, India's, Israel's in Asia, depending on how you look at it. And so AI is, means different things to different people, often comes with misconceptions. But I imagine as you're looking at new projects across the range of sort of baskets that you deal with projects, AI is increasingly figuring in all of them. It's kind of ubiquitous. Our argument here is it's a horizontal technology. It changes everything. Is that the case, or am I overstating the role it's playing in the new things coming down the pike for you?
Yeah, so I think that you're of course right, both in the terms perspective, but also in the essence. When it comes to terms, we don't get anymore any business presentation that doesn't say that we're an AI business. This is just in terms of the terms. You wouldn't send today as a founder, you wouldn't send a deck that doesn't have your AI story, which is fine. It makes sense because that's where, these are where the fast moving water is, and that's what people want to hear. So that is, you're right that everything is AI because everything's AI because we call everything AI. But in the essence of it, I think that we're seeing AI disrupt almost every company. And there are essentially a few layers to look at it. One layer is the layer of how we do everything. And so, for example, if you're writing code today and you're not using AI, then you're just not getting the most of your capabilities. And so this has nothing to do with your business. You can be a business of writing a game, creating a game, or a business of creating enterprise software, but the people working in this company must use AI to write code, to test the code. If you're doing design work, and it doesn't matter whether it's a screen for an enterprise application or a game or a consumer app, you would be stupid today or you'd be inefficient not to use AI in doing this. So the first layer is that basically when we look at companies, every company uses AI or should be using AI to increase their efficiency. And we take it to the extreme of this concept of the three-person unicorn, we call it, where 2 or 3 people can basically command an army of AI agents to build a company, to build a product and then a company, so that they can create a company that generates hundreds of millions of dollars without lots of people. We're not there yet, but this is like when you take this concept and you extract it, this is where this is where you get to. And so that's the first layer, and that's true for every company. There isn't a single company in the world, doesn't matter what it does, that shouldn't be doing this. By the way, also a traditional bank or a cellular operator or whatever, everybody should be doing that. That's the first layer. The second layer is the layer of, is AI relevant for the way users interact with your product or service? And so notwithstanding how you build that, the question is, and let's make it very simple to start with, do the users want to input data into your system using typing, or do they want to have a conversation? Do they want this conversation to be a very scripted conversation, so very limited, or do they want this to be a more open conversation? And so clearly, when you think about that, many new products or many products could actually be interacted very differently using AI. I'll take the smallest, kind of stupid example. There's this, in consumers, there's this thing called calorie trackers for people that are trying to watch their diet. And up till today, it was very annoying because you had to go into this, big database of foods and kind of, choose the right food that you're eating. But today there are apps where you basically point your camera, you click at it, and it kind of gives you, at least it narrows it down dramatically up to the point of maybe even doing it completely automatic. The core product, which is calorie counting, which is a database that takes everything you eat, collects it, and then analyzes what's inside it, what's the ingredients, what's the calories, and then gives you like a daily summary and warns you if you're eating too much. The product stays the same, but the interaction, both the input and the output, could be very different. And the same thing applies also for enterprise applications and for SMB businesses. So basically, every product should ask itself, are we going to have a totally different interaction because of AI? And then the third level are businesses that were not possible before completely. These are businesses where you're basically doing something that was not possible before. And so we're creating a totally new service or a totally new product or capability that didn't exist before. One of my favorite examples today is a company we invested in called Autograph. What it does is that you're basically, usually it's somebody buying it for somebody older. And then when you're buying the service, that person gets a phone call. And on the phone call, there is an AI biographer writing your story. And that AI asks you to tell about your life, and then you keep on telling, and it keeps on giving you feedback and getting more and more information. And then eventually this becomes like a repository of all your memories, which then could be transformed into a video or a book or anything else. But later on, this is also kind of a specifically trained LLM with somebody's memories that you can then query on as the kid or as the relative or as anybody else, and so on and so on. And so this is the kind of service that was not there before at all. You couldn't do it before. You couldn't extract it because the way to extract it would have been just writing a lot that people wouldn't want. You probably could have done it by hiring a real person, but that would have been really expensive. And what we're seeing is that basically the users that were onboarded are spending more than an hour a day with this AI telling their story, and the level of satisfaction from the product is super high. So these are like new type of services that were not possible before, which could be, many of those would be consumer products, by the way, which is why we think this is going to be an age of consumer products again, because a lot of the unlocking is actually in consumer products. And so the three layers are, how do you build whatever business you have? The second layer is how AI changes the way people consume your product, based input or output. How does that change? And then the third level is completely new products that are AI enabled that were not possible before AI. And the outcome of these things, when you connect them, is that yes, every business changes by AI, although some business are just becoming more efficient or just becoming better to consume, while others are completely new services that we never had before.
Yeah, that's a great description. It does contain some chilling elements to it with your autograph discussion. There, all I could think of was the creation of the Jewish Mother app that, lives on forever, nagging you each morning. Are you really? are you really wearing that? It's connected to your camera. You're going to wear that when you're going out? You're looking tired.
Yeah, but by the way, one of the requests that we're getting from people is that whatever memories come out of it's generally their parents, whatever memories come out of it, being that we also have the voice and the intonation, could we basically compile it into being able to speak to the parent? And if you've taken, hundreds of hours, then theoretically you could have a relatively meaningful discussion. We're not going there yet. This is still not the product, but it's definitely something that, sounds a bit like Black Mirror, but I think that we are living in a bit of a Black Mirror world right now, and the pace of change is going to be so fast that things like that are going to become not just very possible, but also desirable by some people.
Yeah, no question. I mean, there's a story today of Zuckerberg yesterday going, I expect AI to be people's friends. They'll talk to them for an hour or two in the day because they can. And if you're lonely and living apart, it can become.
Look, David, it's this gets into the philosophical question. I just had a debate about another company in the pharma space that is basically helping market drugs to specific people, and you're going like, okay, do we need this in our world? And then the answer is that if I'm being treated for my condition and the treatment is not working, then yeah, definitely I want to know about other treatments, right? Because it's not working. If it is working, maybe I don't want to be I don't want to be nagged by something else. So everything has the plus and a minus. I think that when you think about the loneliness pandemic, it would have been much better if we didn't have the loneliness pandemic, if people stopped being in screens, got back to talking to each other, got back to playing together in real life, especially kids, and teenagers. But the reality is that the pandemic exists. And so if the pandemic exists, would we be smart to block the ability to basically tackle some of the symptoms using AI, or would we be smart enabling it? I think that's a big question. I think also that, when you think about what's going to dictate happy life versus unhappy life, a lot of it is going to be kind of social wealth in a way. I think that when you think in the future, there's going to be a big difference between the people that are going to get love and affection and interaction with real humans versus those that are going to get it from AI. Now, maybe getting it from AI is better than not getting it at all, but it's definitely not going to be a good replacement to getting it from real humans.
Yeah, there's no question about that. You did an article, which I saw, which was up at the NFX site, which has a lot of interesting articles on it, called "The Next 10 Years Will Be About the AI Agent Economy." And that relates to what you were talking about. We've talked here about agentic AI and its manifestations. And frankly, as you describe it, it's hard to imagine a business where this won't be relevant. And in the article, you talk about vertical applications versus horizontal applications, and your past experience with that as an investor and watching technologies evolve. And I thought it'd be great if you could talk a little bit about that here.
Yeah, I think that the jury's still out whether we're going to eventually see the agentic AI software space turn into vertical or horizontal. I think that in some areas it is very likely that we'll see applications that are good for many industries. So I assume, for example, that let's take something relatively simple. So if you need an agent that runs through everybody's emails and messaging platforms and collects all the invoices and puts them into your ERP, which is like a very basic agent, but it still has a lot of value. Then there really isn't that much difference if I am a software company or a travel company or something else. An agent needs to go, take the invoices, recognize them, decide how to categorize them, look at the categories in the ERP or the accounting system and put them in. And so the same agentic platform could be relevant for many industries. On the other hand, when you think about very specific tasks, like if I take one that I think is going to be super accelerated with agentic AI, which is, for example, claims management in insurance. when you look at many of the claim executives or clerks, called differently in different companies, let's say that your window breaks. What they do is that you say, my window broke. They tell you, send the photo. You send the photo. They say, this is the wrong angle. Send me another one. You send another one. They say, that's okay. They say, send your policy, and on and on and on. At the end of the day, this costs, depending on the kind of claim, between $5 to $40 per claim handling. And this is before the decision. This is just a collection of everything. All of that would be done much better with AI, with a lot more patience, without getting upset, with less human mistakes, with probably a much nicer interaction, and probably costing, I don't know, 1/100th of the cost. And so this is a very specific thing, because then the travel company doesn't need that, and even the bank doesn't need that. It's the insurance company that needs that. And so what we're seeing today, which is a little bit like in general software, we're seeing that in some areas, the solutions are vertical, and in other areas, they're very horizontal. And I think that the way we're seeing it evolve today, and it's kind of moving by the day, it's likely to be the same thing. There will be super industry specific agentic systems that will handle very specific tasks that are very common in this industry. And in very general areas, like maybe support tickets or finance or other areas, we're going to see systems that are going to go cross industries. The way we look at it is that we're trying to generally understand where we need to focus on vertical and where we need to focus on horizontal, and find the areas, of course, where at the end of the day the sweet spot is large enough. So if it's horizontal, how large could it be horizontal? If it's vertical, what's the vertical? How large it is, and how much do we think this can sell in this vertical? And this we found is a very nice framework that helps us understand whether we're choosing the right company to invest in or not.
And to which is your preference?
We really don't have a clear preference. We think that at the end of the day, the biggest issue is understanding today not just market potential, but also the ability to create an off-the-shelf product that will be good for your function or for your vertical, depending where you go, but also understanding what's the real moat and how deep it is. At the end of the day, in many of these products, when we look at it eventually, we understand that the wrapper around the LLM that they're using, whatever LLM they're using, may not be a deep enough moat. And so we're looking to see what kind of integrations they need to have, what kind of specific industry training they're adding on top of it, what kind of workflow are they adding that the general system or another system would have a tough time adding. Do they have any unique data that they're training the system that nobody else can get access to, so that makes them defensible? And in many of the cases, including some really, really nice companies, the answer, sadly, at the end of it is that we're not sure it's really defensible. And so we've found defensible horizontal ones, we've found defensible vertical ones, but we've mostly found non-defensible ones on both.
Yeah, I bet you have. As we look at the evolution of all of this, and as you as an investor look at possibilities, clearly one of the areas that's going to be key is how regulatory regimes evolve around the world. I was a senior trader official in the Clinton administration, and we were at a period where the big thing for big companies was regulatory harmonization. There were 180 countries, 200 countries, and if you had 180 regulatory regimes, scalability was very difficult. This becomes particularly important in certain areas with regard to AI, because of course, what a lot of AI is pattern recognition in giant databases. And the bigger your database, the more patterns you can see, and whether that's recognizing a disease or recognizing a security threat or recognizing an opportunity of some sort or another, owning the data, having access to the data is the key to the power of the platform. Europeans have one inclination with regard to this. Countries like China say all the data is the states. The United States is going through a bit of a moment here where the view of this administration is let 1,000 flowers bloom. It's kind of, I mean, even in our big budget bill that's going through our Congress right now, there's regulations saying states can't regulate AI for 10 years. So it's kind of wide open. As an investor, how do you look about having these multiple, not just systems, but kind of philosophical approaches to this? And is that an impediment to scale?
Look, I think we're living in a very, very tough moment from that perspective, because the way the world works makes it impossible to set a coherent strategy or policy across different countries. And that creates a huge issue. And, in a way, I mean, let me take another much simpler example. So, I personally probably wouldn't mind, and, all my VC friends are not going to like me for saying it, but I probably wouldn't mind if there would be a global 90% tax rate for everybody that has more than $1 billion. Because personally, I don't think that anybody really benefits from having more than $1 billion. I mean, I may be wrong, but that's my view of life. The problem, of course, is that let's say that I work really hard to pass such regulation in Israel. It doesn't matter because everybody's going to go elsewhere. And then if I manage to do it also in the United States, they're going to go elsewhere, and so on and so on and so on. And you could see now the UK, England changing their tax regime and everybody moving to Milan or to other places that give them zero tax. And so, in reality, the world could have been a much better place, at least in my view, if we could have a global policy around that. AI regulation is dramatically more complicated than this, but suffers from the same problem. I think that for humanity, it would have been probably very diligent to not just control data access and make sure the data access is kind of kept in a more egalitarian manner, so that more innovation could be, people couldn't lock data and more innovation could come out of it. But also maybe controlling the pace of AI creation and AI agents creation, because nobody's really stopping and asking ourselves, where is this heading? And at the end of the day, this goes toward huge unemployment. And I think that everybody that says, there's going to be new jobs really doesn't understand what's happening. I polled a few of my friends that are running very large companies, 100,000 people plus. And I asked them confidentially, where do they think their workforce is going to be 5 years from now? And the average answer was less than 50% of where it is today. And so will there be new jobs? Is it another industrial revolution where people are going to stop working in the fields and start working in factories? I don't think so. I think it's very different. So this is going to end up with huge unemployment. This is going to end up with huge issues on emotional interaction between humans and machines. This is going to end up with dramatic rise in inequality. This is going to end up with a huge difference between, if you think about the digital divide of the past versus the AI digital divide, it's not even close. It's crazy. This is going to end up with potentially, AI. I'm not one of these. I don't have these fears that AI is going to take over the world and kill us all. But I definitely see a world in which AI, tears down economies, or AI, whatever, disrupts companies, or AI, because if all of AI, let's say all of shopping is going to be by AI agents going out and doing your shopping, and let's say that a lot of it's going to be based on OpenAI, and let's say like wrappers around OpenAI or the core OpenAI product, and let's say that for some reason OpenAI decides that buying a specific brand of of milk is no longer good. In the past, when Google decided that you're not going to be shown in search results by mistake or for some reason, you lost part of your business, but that was only part of your business. It also had a big impact, but it was part of your business. What happens now if your AI agent just decides to not buy this mayo or not buy this milk or whatever. So I think there's so many layers of impact on human lives, society, not to mention, of course, what's going to happen in warfare. There's all these changes happening, and we probably should have had kind of a global committee that's going to look at it and try to implement something. But the reality is that, of course, it's exactly the opposite. Not only don't we have a global committee, nobody's talking to it, this is open competition. When India says you can't run AI models, trying to be a bit responsible, again, maybe exaggerated, but everybody leaves everybody leaves and goes elsewhere. And so by giving up, we're not just, my fear is that not only are we, that this is too much competition or that this is too much free market. My fear is that in this rush toward, the AI gold, we're basically putting aside all the potential risks, and that these potential risks are probably much larger than the potential risks of other revolutions where we let the capitalist approach of let's see who makes more money lead. Having said all that, I don't sadly see anybody changing it. Not in the United States, not in China, not even in Israel or elsewhere. And so, I think that we're heading toward a super chaotic period where I don't think literally anybody can predict where it's going. Because, one wrong turn here or there could impact the world dramatically. Again, I don't think humanity is going to disappear. I don't think AI is going to put us in cocoons and harvest us for energy or something. I don't see this happening, but I definitely see unemployment growing, inequality growing, public unrest growing, rather than AI working for the benefit of everybody, AI potentially making something very miserable. And I guess that's we just need to look at it, and when if something negative comes up, we need to try and deal with it when it does.
Sorry. Yeah, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've been involved in AI and AI-related spaces before people were calling it AI. And it's very clear to me that you're right. I agree with literally everything that you've just said, and I think it's complicated by other factors. The Industrial Revolution, we could say it started in the late 18th century. James Watt patenting a steam engine in 1770s. It took 150 years to get to China. And over that time, the philosophical debate occurred. Adam Smith was 1770s. Karl Marx was 1840s. On and on. We've had debate about how to deal with this new world and new social contract for 150 years. But everything you're talking about is going to happen in 5 years. Yeah. Governments can't even keep up with that. And so it creates a challenge of a kind that we've never seen before. Great opportunities. But anybody, I just want to underscore what you're saying here. Anybody who tells you they know what's going to happen is lying.
Yeah.
Because
and I'll say more than this, I don't want people to think that I'm super negative on AI. I think that the benefits for humanity and the benefits for economy and the benefits for lots of things like drug discovery are huge. And, we definitely don't want to stop that. I do think, however, that it is a very, very risky revolution, and one that had there been a way to continue pushing forward with more, let's say, humanity-wide control, that would have been better. And we sadly don't have that. And I think that the rush right now, that I'm part of it. It's not that I'm not part of it. I'm funding companies. I'm pushing forward. I'm getting people to roll their products faster and faster. I love it. I enjoy it. I enjoy the innovation. But all the time, I'm also looking at it and I'm saying, wow, is this is this potentially a little bit out of control? And I'll share with you something interesting. We just had I'm running this kind of task force trying to understand what we could do in Israel to make the most of it. And a while back, somebody asked me, what's the positive thing for Israel? And, clearly it's positive because tech hubs are going to do better than places there are no tech hubs, and Israel has top talent. So all of that. But also when I think about it, our problem is, our advantage is that we basically only have 10 million people. So the amount of people that we need to retrain to be AI savvy, to be AI capable is so small compared to the rest of the world that if we do it correctly, Israel could be a source for AI trained talent better than any other place in the world. And so, if I look at it, it's also a huge challenge for Israel, but at least Israel is a smaller country which is tech savvy and relatively centralized, with a centralized education system and a lot of power for the tech ecosystem. I think that actually for Israel, this could be a huge opportunity. Sadly, we have a government busy with other things that needs to be clearly solved way before. But I think that for Israel and for other countries that would take ownership of that, there's actually a huge opportunity to turn this into a competitive advantage. Those that will not get ready, the countries that will not get ready, I think are going to have a super tough time.
No question about it. I think also, though, that within that there is a shift in the geopolitical equation, because historically the unit by which the strength of a nation was measured was humans, and that was the big multiplier in armies and in workforces. But in the world of the agentic AI, in the world of AI doing a lot of the jobs, much smaller countries can have much more power. They can project force in a variety of ways, unmanned vehicles and so forth. It changes a lot of the equation. I guess that's a kind of good news. You're an investor and there's a lot of opportunities out there and you can sort through them. I have a AI advisory company where we have a bunch of government officials who also understand AI, who are trying to help investors and help people in the space figure out where the government policies are going to go and so forth, because it's so hard to do. Yeah. So there'll be some work for us for a while, but there are disruptive challenges at the core of all of this, disruptive opportunities. And that's the kind of thing we'd really like to talk about more. I hope you've enjoyed this enough that perhaps we can persuade you to come back again sometime in the future to talk about this more, because I find your insights are great, not just because I agree with everything that you've said, but because they're drawn from considerable experience that I think benefits our listeners. So for now, let me say thank you, Gigi, and thank you, David. For all of you out there, go to NFX, follow what they're doing. There's a lot of interesting work there, and we'll return to continue this discussion at some time in the future. And of course, every week here at Scylla Consciousness, we'll do a deep dive on AI, and every week at our AI Energy and Climate podcast, we'll do that, and of course, the same in our various events and other activities. So please follow us here, and I think there's plenty to discuss. So we'll be back with you more next week. Bye-bye.